It wasn't lightning or blood that shattered Nnenna's world. It was the sound of her own brand name being announced on a radio jingle, but not by her. In the bustling city of Enugu, where red earth clings to sandals and market women shout prices louder than the bus's honk, two friends built something rare: trust. Nnenna and Ifeoma, as close as kin. If you saw one without the other, people would ask, "Are you sick?" Nnenna had the idea, a modern African fabric line that combined old dyeing techniques with bold Ankara fusion patterns. A brand rooted in heritage, but designed for the future. She named it Owuru no Odi, a new beginning. She sketched patterns after work, studied supply chains, and sourced dye from her uncle's village. Her dream was honest, careful, planted like cassava and tended like hope. Ifeoma was there through it all. She helped write the business plan. She lent her laptop. She even helped Nnenna print samples at a tiny print shop behind the National Museum. But Nnenna was careful. The full design catalog, pricing strategy, and brand pitch deck, she kept that saved. Not online, on a small USB, tucked in the lining of her purse. Then came the pitch competition. The Legos Heritage Startup Fund was offering 5 million naira to one business that could revive African heritage with modern innovation. Nnenna got the call. Her eyes brimmed. "Ifeoma," she whispered, "this is our chance." But Nnenna had to leave town for her cousin's burial in Aba. She would be gone 3 days. "I'll email the final files when I return," she told Ifeoma. "Don't worry, the deadline's next week." Ifeoma smiled. The next day, Nnenna's flat was broken into. Nothing stolen, except her laptop bag. When she returned, Ifeoma was acting strange, overly helpful, overly cheerful. But Nnenna was too distracted by grief and the need to meet the application deadline to notice, until 1 week later, her friend Rita called her. "Nnenna, are you launching another brand?" "What do you mean?" "There's this new startup trending on Twitter called New Dawn Heritage. The pitch is exactly like yours, even the taglines. And the founder's picture. It's Ifeoma." Nnenna dropped the phone. She checked. Every file, every word, her brand, her vision, repackaged with a new name and Ifeoma's face smiling under it. Photos from her own mock-up files, but cropped. Her ideas, her fonts, even the product shots had her hand-dyed scarves. And the next day, it was announced. New Dawn Heritage had won the 5 million naira grant. Nnenna couldn't breathe. She walked, for hours, from a bakpa to coal camp, past the old stadium, past the women grilling plantain by the roadside. When she returned, she sat alone in her one-room flat. She didn't cry. She just stared at the USB backup she still had. Then she stood. The next morning, she walked into her aunt's shop in Ogbete Market and rented the stall beside it. No announcement, no noise. She renamed her brand Ugwene-Iru, Dignity Forward. She called an old friend in Suka who made short videos. She called her cousin who styled photo shoots. Within 3 weeks, she relaunched. Quiet, elegant, with proof. And then she called a lawyer. By the time Ifeoma's business was featured in Business Day, the cease and desist letter had already arrived. At first, Ifeoma laughed it off. "Who's going to believe you?" she scoffed. "It's your word against mine." But it wasn't. Nnenna had timestamps, emails, file metadata, video files of her creating the dye patterns, signed voice notes with dates. Then came the bigger blow. One of the Lagos judges leaked the internal score sheet. Nnenna's original pitch, the one Ifeoma submitted, had been flagged for style, originality, and concept. The panel was beginning to ask questions. By the next quarter, Nnenna was being interviewed by Arise TV, not just as a designer, but as the woman who had her idea stolen, and came back with something even better. And Ifeoma? The grant was frozen. Legal notices followed. Some of her customers boycotted. One of her main suppliers, who had known Nnenna's family, cut ties. Still, it wasn't revenge Nnenna wanted. She just wanted her name back. But Ifeoma wasn't done. because what she did next was something even Betrayal couldn't explain. Nnenna was rebuilding. She wasn't waiting for applause. She was stacking her fabric rolls, restocking her dyes, shipping her orders in brown, eco-friendly wraps, one scarf, one turban, one fitted top at a time. And then one morning she arrived at her stall to find her samples missing. Gone. No broken locks, no smashed windows, but the mannequins stood bare, stripped overnight. 3 new designs, all limited, vanished. No CCTV in that corridor, no witness. Her heart beat differently now, not with rage, but calculation. She didn't call the police. Instead, she picked up her phone and texted someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Macaw. Macaw had grown up with them. She used to run with street kids in the markets, sharp-tongued, loud, fearless. She didn't sell clothes, she sold information. By nightfall, Macaw replied, "Your designs are being copied. And not in China. Here, in Enugu, in a private showroom, fronted by Ifeoma's cousin. I can get you inside, but it will cost you." Nnenna stared at the screen, then sent the money. 2 days later, she stood in a dimly lit studio near Polo Park Mall, wearing a borrowed jumpsuit and a wig. Macaw had forged an ID. Inside, a staffer guided her through racks of New Dawn Heritage Originals. There, hanging near the back wall, were her missing designs, labeled "Coming Soon." They hadn't just stolen her clothes, they had rebranded her ideas again, naming one the Sapphire Nsidi, a name she had written in her design journal a year ago. Something snapped in her chest. Back at home, she didn't weep. She researched. She started documenting everything: voice recordings, timestamps, fabric suppliers, even printing receipts with the weight of her rolls and her dye formulas. Then, she called her cousin in Lagos, who worked with an intellectual property firm. This time the lawsuit wasn't just about theft, it was about identity. But just as the legal gears began turning, Nnenna received a DM from an anonymous account. "If you go through with this, you won't just lose your business. We know about your mother's clinic, your brother's NYSC posting. Back off." For the first time, Nnenna's hands trembled, not because she was afraid for herself, but because Ifeoma had turned something personal into something dangerous. Nnenna didn't reply. She went to her mentor, Mrs. Ogugwa, a retired textile professor who had once curated exhibitions in Cape Town and Accra. The woman had mentored both her and Ifeoma in university. Nnenna told her everything. Mrs. Ogugwa listened, quiet, then said, "Some people think legacy is built by stepping over others, but legacy built on stolen soil never survives a storm. You must decide, do you want to expose her or outgrow her?" Nnenna chose both. She launched a series called Unstolen. Each item came with a scan code linking to behind-the-scenes videos showing her process: drawing, dyeing, designing, sewing. She partnered with young artisans in Nsukka and hired her aunt, a retired teacher, to manage customer emails. Her story went viral, but not in a tabloid way, in a movement way. @Unstolen trended on Twitter. By month's end, her platform had doubled. Her stock sold out in 48 hours. She was invited to speak at the African Creative Women Summit in Nairobi, and still, she never once said Ifeoma's name, until the court date arrived. Ifeoma showed up with polished lawyers and a glossy presentation, but what she didn't know was this: Maka had turned. For reasons of her own, guilt maybe, Maka had recorded voice memos from her days helping Ifeoma's cousin, recordings of conversations, planning the theft, even a moment where Ifeoma herself admitted, "Let her cry over her stupid USB. This is Lagos money. She'll fade." The courtroom was silent. The judge granted a public apology, compensation, and a partial injunction against New Dawn Heritage. But Nnenna didn't smile, because as they stepped outside the courthouse, Ifeoma looked at her and whispered, "You think this is over? You've embarrassed me. You'll regret it." 3 weeks later, someone tried to burn Nnenna's stall. The fire didn't finish the job, but it licked the edges. By the time Nnenna reached her market stall, smoke still curled from the fabric scraps, and her best sewing machine lay warped. Plastic panels melted into the metal body. One mannequin had no head. The fire brigade said it was an electrical fault. Nnenna knew better. This wasn't business anymore. It was war. But she didn't shout. She didn't accuse. Instead, she walked to her neighbor's stall, Mama Gozi, the bead seller, and asked quietly, "Did you see anything unusual last night?" Mama Gozi hesitated, then leaned in. "A boy, hooded, skinny, around midnight. He poured something by your lock, then vanished. That night, Nnenna couldn't sleep. She had no enemies. None, except the one she had once loved like a sister. She paced. What would her late father do? A retired civil servant who raised her to believe in quiet dignity, in documentation, in rising without dragging. But this wasn't a paper war anymore. Ifeoma had sent fire, so Nnenna responded with light. She used her savings to open a pop-up in Lagos, small but elegant, located in Yaba, close to universities, buzzing with young creatives. She called it the Dignity Lab, a place where customers could watch fabrics come alive in real time, from thread to color to cut. She made videos of every process. No gatekeeping, no secrets. Soon, she was invited to co-host a documentary with an international textile historian, Threads of the Ancestors. And while she spoke on camera about the meanings of Nsibidi, about women dying with ilu in clay pots, her inbox kept filling. Because Ifeoma's business was collapsing. News had broken that her designs were under injunction. Clients began distancing themselves. Her cousin, panicked, had spoken to a journalist off-record, blaming Ifeoma for everything. But it wasn't enough. Because Ifeoma wasn't done falling. She released a blog post entitled "The Truth Behind the Brand War, What Nnenna Isn't Telling You." It was venom, cloaked as elegance. Paragraphs accusing Nnenna of being manipulative, controlling, and secretly jealous of her success, accusing her of sending spies, hacking, and destroying sisterhood for clout. The post gained traction. For the first time, Nnenna saw negative comments beneath her videos. Maybe she's not as innocent as she acts. Why not settle this privately? Women bringing women down again. She stared at her screen, silent. This wasn't just theft anymore. It was character assassination. And still, she didn't reply publicly. Instead, she went to Port Harcourt. Why? To meet Ifeoma's older sister, Adaobi, the one who had cut off contact after their university days. Adaobi had once told Nnenna, "My sister is brilliant, but when she's afraid, she becomes cruel." Nnenna brought no press, no lawyers, just her records, her proof, her exhaustion. Adaobi listened. She didn't say much, just looked away for a long time, then said, "When we were 10, Ifeoma stole my school project and got first prize. When I confronted her, she cried so hard our mother begged me to say I was mistaken." Silence. "I believe you, but I also know Ifeoma won't stop until you break or she does." Nnenna left with a strange peace. The next week, she launched an initiative called Restitched, a fashion mentorship program for young girls in local communities across Nigeria. She toured schools, shared her story, carefully, with grace, never naming names. It made the headlines again, but this time not for drama, for impact. And then came the final twist. A lawyer from the Lagos Startup Grant Board called. The Internal Ethics Committee had reopened Ifeoma's file. If evidence showed fraud, she would be forced to return all funding with interest. The board invited both women to a final arbitration, a chance to speak their truth, face to face. The room was sterile. White lights, 2 chairs, a table, 3 observers. Nnenna wore a simple indigo dress, hair tied back. Ifeoma arrived late. She didn't greet anyone, just sat. When asked to speak, she gave a long, defensive monologue, blamed pressure, competition, claimed they had shared ideas, that nothing was truly original. Then it was Nnenna's turn. She didn't raise her voice. She just pulled out one item, her old purse, the one Ifeoma had stolen the USB from, still scorched on the inside from the fire. Inside it, the original fabric swatches, designs, and handwritten notes dated months before Ifeoma's pitch. One of the observers quietly said, "We have enough." But Nnenna wasn't done. She turned to Ifeoma and said, "I don't want your grant. I don't want revenge. I want my name back, and I want never to see you in my shadow again." Her lips quivered, but no words came. The news broke 2 weeks later. Ifeoma was ordered to repay the 5 million naira grant with interest. Her accounts were frozen. Her cousin disappeared from Enugu entirely. The new Dawn Heritage storefront was emptied overnight. One last post went up on their page, vague, bitter, and defensive, and then silence. But Nnenna didn't rejoice. She worked. Her restitched program grew, spreading into Benue, Kogi, and even a partnership in Ghana. She appeared in a BBC Africa spotlight not as a victim, but as a builder, a restorer, one who created without stepping on necks. And still, not once did she say Ifeoma's name in public. But in private, Nnenna carried the scar, the betrayal, the part of her heart that still asked in quiet moments, how could she? After everything? Until the call came, a number she didn't recognize. It was Adeobi. "She's not well," Adeobi said. "I don't mean mentally. I mean, she's tired. The shame is eating her. The silence. The isolation. She's in Nsupa living with an uncle, and she asked for you." Nnenna didn't answer immediately. She took a long walk, past the road her father used to walk with her as a child, past the Akara woman with the same crooked teeth and joyful laugh, past her old university dormitory, where she and Ifeoma used to dream aloud till morning. Then she got on the next bus to Nsuka. Ifeoma opened the door herself, thinner, paler, eyes not angry, just hollow. They sat. There was no dramatic apology, just silence. And then, "I was afraid you'd outshine me." And you did. But what I didn't expect was that you'd still rise, even after I tried to bury you. Nnenna stared at her. "You didn't bury me. You just proved I had roots." Tears came, quiet, ugly, real. And for the first time in 2 years, they spoke like humans again. Not like competitors, not like ghosts. Nnenna left without promises, but she left behind a folder, her restitched handbook, curriculum, contacts, options. "Use it well, but not in my name." Months passed. One day, Nnenna's assistant brought her an envelope. No return address. Inside, a swatch of cloth, not hers, not a copy, new, original, patterned with broken chains that bloomed into leaves. Folded inside, a note. "I am trying again. From the ground. Thank you for forcing me to face myself. Signed, I." Nnenna smiled. Then she returned to her studio. Her team was waiting. Orders had doubled again. A young girl from Makurdi had just sent in a drawing she wanted to turn into a dress for her graduation. Nnenna rolled up her sleeves, because some victories don't need trophies, just a name that no longer trembles when spoken.